Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm Betsy Hatfield, Executive Director of Preservation Kentucky, and I'm delighted that you're joining us today for this important webinar on the federal tax credit. Our series is being made possible by a grant from Brown-Forman, which we greatly appreciate. This grant also helped update our new website and expand the knowledge base and educational materials offered there, so I hope you'll take a moment to visit it and utilize the publications, information, and events calendar on our website at www.preservationkentucky, all spelled out, .org. And if you haven't signed up for our email news, you can do so on our website. We will upload today's webinar to our website and YouTube channel, and we'll share the link with you so that you may view it again. And you may ask questions throughout the webinar by submitting them in the questions section of your control panel. We'll answer questions immediate following the presentation, and the 5 handouts are in the control panel in your webinar system. Renee Kuhlman is the Director of Policy Outreach for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, where she's worked since 1997, having served in policy and education positions there. She's been assisting legislators in advocating the adoption, expansion, and protection of state-level historic rehabilitation tax credit programs throughout the country since 2004. She also works on the campaign to protect and expand the federal historic tax credit and helps secure dedicated funding for maintaining historic resources throughout our national parks. In her 20 years at the National Trust, Renee has provided advocacy training, written several articles, blogs, and briefs on policy issues, and developed close working relationships with preservationists nationwide. Prior to the Trust, she was Executive Director of the historic Fredericksburg Foundation, where she successfully helped defend George Washington's boyhood home from a planned Walmart development, launched a scholarly journal, and created an annual lecture series. Renee earned a Master's of Science in Historic Preservation from the University of Vermont and a Bachelor of Arts in History from the College of William and Mary. For the last 3 years, Robert Naylor has been Program Manager for Preservation Action, where he monitors policy issues and provides weekly legislative updates. His role includes organizing the annual National Preservation Advocacy Week and monthly conference calls with state partners like Preservation Kentucky, which provide helpful updates and a great resource for our information sharing and ideas. He's also been involved with the preservation and redevelopment efforts in the Over the Rhine Historic District in his hometown, Cincinnati, Ohio. His prior positions include work on congressional and gubernatorial campaigns in Ohio and Kentucky. Robert is a graduate of Kent State University, where he majored in political science and history. Besides being incredibly qualified, intelligent, and talented individuals, Renee and Robert are also extremely helpful supporters of and resources for Preservation Kentucky and other partners throughout the country. And we've accomplished some of our tax credit goals due to their work on our behalf. So I'm excited that you all are having the opportunity to hear from them today because they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. And with that, I will now turn over the screen to Renee Kuhlman. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Betsy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today, and I'm trying to get it so that the slideshow shows my screens. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. One of the things that I work on at the National Trust for Historic Preservation are state historic tax credits, like Betsy had mentioned. So this is information about an upcoming webinar that we'll be offering later on the month. But I think a lot of advocates have been working at their state level to make their state historic tax credits the best incentives for preservation. And a lot of them use the federal historic tax credit as their model, which is an income, it's a tax that's taken against your income tax. One of the great things that I've had the privilege of doing is working on the Federal Historic Tax Credit campaign. And as such, I got to go to the Pittsburgh conference of the National Main Street and got to see Covington, Kentucky win a Great American Main Street Award. And one of the reasons why Covington won this award, which is a national award recognizing outstanding performance of their Main Street program, is due in large part to historic tax credits. The folks in Covington have really learned how to take advantage of the federal and state historic tax credit program and to make this help revitalize downtown Covington. So the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Preservation Action, and other partners have been working on the campaign to protect the federal historic tax credit. And I know that Rob and I are pleased to be here today to talk to you about this particular campaign. There was a bill that's been introduced in both the House and Senate called the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act. In the House, it was introduced by Senator Collins and Senator Cardin from Maine. It's Senate Bill 425. And in the House, it's House Bill 1158. These bills are particularly of interest because it would make improvements to the federal historic tax credit. It's also a way for us to tell our federal legislators that this is a program that's very important to the preservation community and to the redevelopment community. The bill would create a 30% credit for small dills, and even though $2.5 million in qualified rehabilitation expenses seems like a lot if you're renovating a small Main Street building, in the scheme of things, that is actually a small renovation deal. So if you have done the work that would be certified by the Kentucky Heritage Council and the National Park Service, and you are doing that work on a building that is certified historic by those two groups, then you have the ability to take a 20% federal credit. This is something that we believe would be more incentive for smaller projects if they had a larger credit. So that is why these particular legislators have introduced these bills that would create a 30% credit. It also looks at the states and takes good lessons from state historic tax credits. And that is the next provision here, where you see that it would allow a transfer by certificate. If you own the property and you want to renovate the property, you might not have as much tax liability as the certificate. So instead of having the tax credit that you can't use, it's good to get that tax credit in the hand of an entity that has the tax liability. So the way that states do this is they have a certificate that they issue, and then the property owner then has the ability to say to the other entity that has the liability, you know, would you like to do a transaction? And that's a way to monetize the rehabilitation of these projects, is they will then say, I'm going to get a state historic tax credit in the amount of X, and that entity will then say, well, then we would be happy to get into a deal with you and take that tax cut from you in the exchange for whatever percent or whatever monetary transaction they want to make. So this is an idea for the federal government to do the same, because it's a very simple way of getting the credit in the hand of the entity that needs it or can use it. So this would be, we don't think that the federal government has done this in any other program, so this would be a unique item. But it would also have the impact of meaning that you wouldn't have to create a real estate transaction deal that involves expensive lawyers and expensive accountants to create a structured deal. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those pictures, but they can get quite complicated in these partnership deals for real estate transactions. So this would be very simple, and we think that it would help increase the number of Main Street property owners that take advantage of this tax credit. There's also the provision that would lower the threshold to qualify from 100% of the adjusted basis to 50%. So if you're in downtown Covington and you buy a building for $100,000, you have to put in $100,000 of rehabilitation work that would qualify under that qualified rehabilitation expense by those two governmental agencies to qualify. And if you have a building that is run down but is not, doesn't have completely lost its roof or completely lost its windows, and it needs to be renovated, lowering the adjusted basis to 50% would allow you to participate in the program. So those are a couple of the unique provisions that we think would be really important in this Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act. These are examples of the folks who have signed on to sponsor this. And again, this is a way to not only make sure that they are supporting positive changes to the program, but also are saying that this is an important program to their constituents, and therefore, if and when this tax reform comes to be, that people can go and say, well, you said this program was really important, and so please don't touch this program. These, again, are the Senate bill sponsors, and you'll see Senator Cardin and Senator Collins that were the original co-sponsors, and then those folks that have come on afterwards. This is the largest number of co-sponsors that they have had so far at this point in a Congress, and we're very pleased about the bipartisan nature of the bill sponsors. Preservation is definitely a bipartisan issue. Now, bringing it home to you in Kentucky, here is an example of the maps that we've been able to generate that show the historic tax credit use in Kentucky. You'll see that it covers the state. All those dots show where the program has been used. 345 historic tax credit projects have occurred in Kentucky between 2001 and 2016. This has had a big, significant impact on the both local and state and federal economies. But basically about $500 million in total development costs have been spent redeveloping these properties all across the state. This is an example of when those statistics, those numbers are analyzed, what it means in terms of the number of jobs created and the number of taxes generated. So you'll see that the federal historic tax credit amount was about 92 million, a little bit more than 92 million, and that amount leveraged total development costs of about 558 million. So it's a very small project amount, but people tell us that without the historic tax credit, they would not have been able to make these projects pencil out. So it's a very small cost to the federal government, but it has a really big economic leveraging impact. And you can also see that about 9,500 jobs were created as a result. They break these down into two pieces, the number of jobs that were created during the construction phase, and then those number of jobs that were created during the operational phase of the building. We also have attached for you not only the map, but also a list of historic tax credit projects, so you can see around Kentucky where the projects have happened. And this is sort of an example from Covington again. You can see where the number of different types of buildings have been used, a doctor's building, a grocery building, a row house, former academy, and you can kind of see on the right-hand side the different uses that have occurred. And this chart also illustrates the different range of sizes. So the historic tax credit does not just benefit those really large projects, but smaller projects are able to take advantage of it as well. I'd like to turn it over to Rob.
Thank you, Renee. We will now turn the presentation over to Rob. There you go, Rob.
Set up there?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, everyone, I just wanted to kind of follow up to everything that Renee was discussing, and kind of talk a little bit about the current threat to the historic tax credit. So essentially what we've been dealing with is the Congress and administration have been working on reforming the tax code. And to do that, in their efforts to do that, the last June, House Republicans released something called a Better Way Tax Reform Blueprint. In this, it called for the elimination of tax credit programs and deductions. It did not name the historic tax credits specifically. It really didn't get down to that level of detail, but this definitely threatens the historic tax credit as part of these tax reform efforts. So since then, Congress and administration have been working towards achieving tax reform. It's one of their large legislative pushes that they've been making since this past election. That and the healthcare reform, which I'm sure many of you have heard about in the news as well. We kind of think that tax reform is kind of is on the next item on the agenda, essentially after they get past that. So. Also, I believe it was in May, the administration released core principles of tax reform. Again, this was very few details, but did also say eliminate tax breaks for special interest, which could apply to the historic tax credit. So those are some of the reasons why all this campaign to make sure the historic tax credit remains part of the tax code and part of these tax reform efforts, why a lot of this is happening. So to kind of bring you up to date on where we are now and what we think the status is, I'm sure you've all been hearing about how the House passed the American Health Care Act a couple months ago. The Senate is now getting close to that. A vote was just postponed last week till after the 4th of July break. So once they get past that, for one, it does a couple of things. It provides a more of a clearer path for tax reform to be able to happen and provides new momentum. You may have heard a little bit about budget reconciliation. They hope to use this to pass both the healthcare bill as well as tax reform, which would only require a simple majority in the Senate. So it makes it a much clearer path forward on tax reform. So it's definitely something we're keeping a close eye on, and we are concerned about. Lawmakers have been working. Nothing has been released yet in terms of a draft of what tax reform would actually look like. A group of lawmakers, primarily from the Ways and Means Committee and Senate Finance Committee, as well as the Majority Leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, and Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, have been working on developing the tax reform legislation. We believe that a bill could be released by as early as September. So we are keeping a close eye on that. And I know recently Speaker Ryan has said that they plan on passing tax reform by the end of this year. So that's the kind of time frame that we're looking at. Obviously, things in Washington change frequently. But there's definitely reasons to be concerned as far as the status of the historic tax credit. So in our efforts to combat that, one of the things that Renee had spoke on was the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act. She spoke on some of the details of what this bill would do to benefit the historic tax credit, but one of the primary benefits, it allows members of Congress to be able to demonstrate the support for the historic tax credit. So by allowing them to be able to demonstrate, we are able to go a little bit more on the offense by having something that members can sign on to, by having something that we can point to as ways to improve the tax credit, as we're looking at as ways to improve the historic tax credit, as members of Congress are looking at ways to improve the overall tax code. So we're very focused on getting members of Congress to sign on to that. We're doing great work on that. As Renee had pointed out, we're up to 66 co-sponsors in the House. I believe it's 34 Republicans and 32 Democrats, so very, very bipartisan, as well as I believe 12 co-sponsors in the Senate. So, like I said, we're doing significantly better on that than we have in even past years. So we're really looking to keep up that momentum. So one of the things that we're asking every advocates to do from across the country is to reach out to the members of Congress and encourage them to sign on to the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act. Actually, I went ahead and looked, and as of now, we don't have any co-sponsors from Kentucky, so there's plenty of work to be able to be done. And I hope you're able to reach out to some of those legislators and encourage them to co-sponsor the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act. The other item we wanted to talk about in terms of ways in which we can show the importance of the historic tax credit, make sure it remains part of any tax reform efforts, is the best way for members of Congress to be able to get it is to be able to touch it, feel it, see it. So we're encouraging everyone to invite their members of Congress to tour a historic tax credit project. This way they can see not only the direct impact on a rehabilitation project, but also see the impact that it's having on the surrounding neighborhood or surrounding district. So I think it's a really great way for them to be able to demonstrate the value of the historic tax credit. And we're coming up on a great time to do that. Congress they're going on their August recess, which lasts from July 31st to September 4th, and this provides the best opportunity for members of Congress to be able to see a historic tax credit project, a rehabilitation project in their district. So we really encourage you to reach out to members of Congress and invite them to tour some of these projects. I know myself and Renee are more than happy to schedule these visits, as well as Betsy here as well. So just reach out to us if you have any questions about how to do that or anything like that. We're happy to help. This is actually a few photos from just a little bit north in Ohio. Heritage Ohio, the statewide group, invited staff of members of Congress to join on to see historic tax credit projects from the Dayton, Ohio area and the Cincinnati, Ohio area. So this also shows that, if a member of Congress is unavailable, it's still more than worthwhile to have to invite members of Congress's staff on these tours as well. They toured sites, like I said, in the old arcade building in Dayton, Ohio, as well as some projects in the Over the Rhine neighborhood of Cincinnati. So, like I said, just an example to show you of some of the things that are possible with that. The other thing we wanted to mention as a way to advocate for the historic tax credit is the National Trust for Historic Preservation Action, as well as the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers, the Historic Tax Credit Coalition, and the National Main Street Center. We're working on a national sign-on letter for businesses and for organizations. This way we can present this to the chair and ranking member of House Ways and Means and Senate Finance Committee, the committees in Congress in charge of that'll be tasked with tax reform. So that way we can take all of these organizations and show these are all constituents of yours, and really show the direct impact across the different sectors of the economy that are all impacted by this tax credit. So we think it's a great way to be able to show that level of support. So we definitely encourage you or your organization or business to sign on to this historic tax credit sign-on letter. We'll have the link and will be available in the uploads in the upload section so for you guys to be able to do that, and also share it with your network, so that way we can spread this letter even further. Here's a little example of the national sign-on letter. Like I said, you can see that we're hoping to get as much support as we can to really show the impact the historic tax credit has. And with that, I know Renee and myself are happy to take any questions regarding the historic tax credit and provide any more insight that we can. And feel free to reach out to us if not here on a different time with our phone number and our email addresses there.
Thanks, Rob. And Renee, before we go through the questions, did you want to review the 5 handouts? And these, by the way, will be included on our website with the webinar recording.
Sure. So we have attached the map and the list of projects that we had talked about, as well as the text of the letter so that you can see what the sign-on letter is. We're asking that organizations, businesses like architects, contractors, trying to get it to be as robust and diverse a letter as possible. We also have talking points on the historic tax credit, so you can actually have the data at your fingertips when you want to explain how the federal historic tax credit returns more to the federal treasury than it costs. So that fact sheet is available. Then there's also a fact sheet on the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act as well. So you can see the different types of provisions that are make up the actual Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act that I went through.
Okay, we have a few questions here. Do you think getting more members of Congress to sponsor the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act will reduce the threat of eliminating the credit?
Rob, do you want to take that one first, or?
Sure. Yeah, I can touch on that. In short, we absolutely think that the more members we can have sign on to the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act really helps to show the support as well as show the bipartisan nature of it. When the House Ways and Means Committee and Senate Finance Committee are looking at the various tax credit programs, they're going to be looking to see what bills that have been introduced that have the level of support and bipartisan nature that we currently have with the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act, and we're looking to build upon. So definitely the more members we can have on that, the better chance that we can have of showing the positive impact the historic tax credit has had and continues to have.
And just to follow on to what Rob was saying, we also are pursuing what they call a whip check strategy, so that when a vote comes on tax reform, they go to each member and ask, how are you likely to vote on this? And the member says, I'm going to vote either for it, against it, or I'm going to vote for it, and I have these following reservations. So it's also a way to bring this to the attention, so that if there is a tax reform bill that comes to the floor that doesn't have the historic tax credit in it, it's also a way to go back to those members and say, you know, you signed on to this bill, so when the whip check person comes around and asks, would you please make sure that this is one of your concerns?
Hey, are there any alternative funding means currently being considered to replace the value of the historic tax credit in the event that Congress does delete this valuable credit?
So this is Renee. If that horrible day does come and the historic tax credit is eliminated during tax reform, there is also an infrastructure package that is potentially being discussed as one way that might be able to put in the historic tax credit program. Because, you know, if one of the goals of the administration is to make sure that the revival of small business America and the revival of small town America, this historic tax credit is absolutely something that would help them achieve those goals. So in the infrastructure package that they put in, should that they come to pass when there is no historic tax credit, then it might be able to be put in place through that. The other thing is that would also be a great place if these changes these improvements that are being proposed, it would also be a big place for that to occur. So there's possibilities there. But I think the main focus of our work should be to try and keep the federal historic tax credit from going away.
Kentucky, here's another final question. Kentucky representatives have so far been non-responsive or outright resistant to the improvement bill. Hopefully we can add enough voices to these representatives to change their mind. Is there anything other than the previously mentioned site visits you can recommend to help lobby them?
Sure, yeah, I can go ahead and touch on this briefly. You know, obviously the site visits we think are a huge part of that, to allow them to, you know, touch, feel, see it, the impact of the historic tax credit program. But I would also just trying to bring more voices into that conversation. You know, the historic tax credit program, there's a lot of different people that are going to be impacted by this, developers and others. So I think kind of building the number of voices that are coming in to speak to members of Congress on this issue, coming from different backgrounds and different perspectives that are all positively impacted by this program. I think that's a great way to try to have a larger impact. I can also mention that, you know, like I said, inviting and meeting your members of Congress in district in person is a great way to really show to really convey the importance of this program and the current threat to it. So whether it be in the current upcoming August recess or times throughout the year, building relationships with the district staff to constantly keep them updated on what's going on with this historic tax credit and why it's important for in their state and in their district.
So this is Renee, and I just want to follow up on what Rob was saying. In addition to site visits or in district, or even coming to Washington and meeting with them there, I know that Preservation organizes a wonderful lobby day in March where folks can come in and make their views known to the folks in D.C. But one of the main things is to have them hear it all the time. So whether it's when they come back home and they're attending an event, or whether they're attending dinner with friends, or whether they, wherever these congressmen and congresswomen are, we definitely want them to be hearing about the historic tax credit. So that's just the more folks that you can tell about it and ask them to make outreach to these members of Congress, the safer the historic tax credit will be.
And I think it's like you all said before, there really is no substitute for a site visit. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but a tour even better.
Yeah, I think if a picture is worth 1,000 words, the site visit is worth at least 10,000, because
there you go.
we've seen a lot of members come back totally convinced after they've seen, and it doesn't have to be in a finished building, in a building that has been totally renovated. You can take them to one that's under construction so they could see the number of construction jobs. You could see them in buildings that have been purchased and the plans to renovate have been made possible through the historic tax credit. And of course, there are those that are completely refinished with new businesses in them. But I think that that's an important point is that Rob made, is it's not only just the members themselves, but also staff come back from DC or in-district staff. And the more that you can make them familiar with the program and how it's working in the district. And it's also not bad if you do not have any historic preservation program projects in your district that have taken advantage of the historic tax credit. You can use that as a springboard to say, here is a white elephant in my building, and in my community, and we need these changes to be made in order for for this building to get renovated. So there's a lot of opportunities in the site visit.
That's a good point, Renee. And just for local folks, we're the Preservation Kentucky, the Kentucky Heritage Council, along with the National Trust and Preservation Action. If you have projects that you'd like some help, maybe strategizing on which might be good ones or a good one to show, we're happy to help with that process as well.
And this is Renee. I just wanted to make a final point about what Rob had talked about, not having any co-sponsors on the Historic Tax Credit Improvement Act from Kentucky. I think when you look at the list of all the projects that have been done and the impacts that it's had in Kentucky, that's a real cause for concern that the Kentucky legislators haven't become aware that this is a way to voice their support. But also you have Senator McConnell, who is a very key person, and I think making him aware of the importance of this program and what it's meant to Kentuckians and Kentucky communities, I think would be very important as well.
Oh, I agree with you. And he's been supportive in the past, so we really need to step up our advocacy efforts with him.
And I was just going to add, we've had folks from Kentucky join us on our annual Advocacy Week we do in March in Washington, D.C., where we have people come out and speak on multiple historic preservation issues, but definitely a huge part of that is the historic tax credit. And that's also a great way to reach members of Congress, because when you make the effort and you're there in person, they really kind of take note of that. When someone comes from Kentucky all the way to D.C. to voice concern about this issue, that definitely has an impact. So, like I said, we do that every March. So we look out for details on that. But we'd love to have other folks from Kentucky join us out there and make your voices heard.
Thank you all so much. I'd like to. Did you have anything else, Renee, before we wrap up?
I sure didn't. Thank you very much for your time and attention, though.
I'd like to thank our presenters, Renee Kuhlman, Director of Public Policy with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and Robert Naylor, Program Manager for Preservation Action, for taking the time to prepare and present today. You've given us some great content, and we really appreciate the information and call to action plan. Again, this webinar, along with the handouts, will be posted on Preservation Kentucky's website and YouTube channel. So you may review it again and share it with others. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact Rob or Renee or myself. And we thank you for attending today and hope you'll join us for future webinars, which will be posted on our website and shared through our e-news.